In an unusual move, Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, has recalled Parliament today, a Saturday, to allow MPs to debate legislation to protect the British steel industry.
Yeah, I wonder how many MPs are going to fly back from the holiday in the Caribbean or wherever in order to be there, because it starts at 11 o'clock this morning, doesn't it? Anyway, all of this, of course, is following all the warnings that a Chinese-owned plant in Scunthorpe is under the threat of closure, which could, of course, put thousands of jobs at risk.
And now, here's what the leaders of some of the main political parties have been saying on the issue.
We will pass emergency legislation in one day to give the Business Secretary the powers to do everything possible to stop the closure of these blast furnaces. And as I have said, we will keep all options on the table. Our future is in our hands. This government will not sit back and just hope. We will act to secure Britain's future.
Well, I'm really worried about those steel jobs because of the tariffs that President Trump has imposed, which are really harsh. It's really hurting British steel and British steel workers. And what Liberal Democrats are saying, the government should designate the steel industry as a national strategic asset. And what does that mean? That means we would make sure that whether it's our energy sector with our wind turbines, whether it's our the new leisure park in Bedfordshire, or whether it's any aspect of our industry, defence industry, for example, that they use British steel.
There has to be an immediate nationalisation of this plant, an immediate nationalisation of primary steel production in Britain. These are the last two blast furnaces operating in the United Kingdom. They will both be closed by the middle of May unless immediate action is taken.
And what did the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, say? Well, she said that nationalisation must be a last resort. And she added that the situation they're facing now is entirely of the government's own making.
Now let's cross live to Westminster and get more on this with our political editor, Christopher Hope.
Morning, Michael, and morning, Anne. Welcome to a glorious, sunny Westminster. Most MPs and peers were expecting to have a nice weekend at home, maybe campaigning for local elections or spend time with their family. Instead, they're back at work here. They've been called back by Sir Keir Starmer yesterday lunchtime, recalling both Houses of Parliament to pass a bill into law in one day. It is called the Steel Industry Special Measures Bill. What this bill will do is give Jonathan Reynolds, he's a business secretary, direct control of running the Scunthorpe steelworks, and also there's a rolling mill on Teesside, which British Steel own. The reason why that is this business is running nearly out of money, according to the government. They say that there's no more money to pay for raw materials. This bill, passed into law in one day, will give Reynolds and his team at the Department of Business and Trade the powers to effectively run the operation. If any workers are fired for defying the Chinese directors, the owners of the company, they'll be reinstated by the UK government. There have been talks about this plant since the election in July last year. They reached an impasse, and it came very clear yesterday, the government tells me, that unless they acted now to take control over the running of this plant, then there would be a very disorderly closure. By that I mean no time to give statutory redundancy to any of the 3,000 staff at the plant. So the government is stepping in now to ensure this business has a future temporarily, because long-term future is much more tricky. It's basically got two blast furnaces in Scunthorpe, and one dates from the 1930s and one from the 1950s. Both of those have around 5 years left of operational life. So the government is taking on an ageing factory here, and it's got to work out the future. Now, this is not nationalisation. You'll hear in Parliament later on GB News, Nigel Farage will put down an motion calling for an immediate nationalisation of British Steel. That's not happening today. They are basically trying to ensure they can secure the workforce and the business as a going concern with UK government involvement, and then look to the future. Now, if they look to nationalise it, they won't need another law. They'll just do it like they've done with some of the rail franchises. But they are hoping to get a private sector partner to get involved and be part of the future of British Steel.
Christopher, Parliament was sitting last Tuesday. Is there anything we know now that we didn't know last Tuesday? Why is Parliament having to come back on a Saturday? Why didn't the government do this in a timely manner?
I think because, frankly, this announcement is not timely by its nature. I think it looks like, in fact, for the mood music coming out of Whitehall is that talks with the Chinese owners have completely broken down. Essentially, this law being passed today will give the government the right to run this factory and to overrule anything said by the Chinese owner, Yingwei. So that's why it's happened. I think talks were ongoing. It reached a point where they had to order raw materials by yesterday, £700 million worth of coal on its way from Japan, by the way, not the UK, who don't make coal anymore. That's a different conversation altogether, but I think needs must. Now, the government's very clear, before you ask me, this is nothing to do with, they say, nothing to do with the increased 25% tariffs on British steel by Donald Trump as part of this increase of flat rate tariffs and others around the world. Some would say the timing is interesting, given I think the mood music has changed internationally, but there's no question the government wants to have and sees now steel as a national asset that must be protected. We understand that 95% of the steel in the railways, new steel for the rail network, is provided by the Scunthorpe steelworks. You don't want to rely on that from overseas when you've got an uncertain tariff situation globally. So they are looking in longer term for a private sector partner. One option is full nationalisation. It's going to be costly. Have we got the money? This plant loses £700,000 a day. That figure is being said by the Chinese owners and confirmed to us by the government. But they recognise, I think, that sovereign capability issues around steel is vital. What has changed since Trump came into the White House is we have to start making stuff here, and that appears to start with British steel.
Us blokes hate talking about a little thinning up top, and many of us settle with that balding look, but that wasn't for me, and that's why I went to Elite Hair, the world's leading hair loss clinic, and now I've had over 4,000 new hairs added to this barnet, and very soon I'm going to be rocking some brand new flowing locks, and you can too. So how does it work? Step 1, I sent the team a set of photos of my head. Step 2, I then spoke to one of the Elite Hair staff who looked through my photo submissions and worked out a treatment plan for me. Step 3, Elite Hair then organised accommodation and the treatment. I was at their state-of-the-art treatment centre in Istanbul, and their incredibly kind staff took me through the process, and before I knew it, I was in surgery. Elite Hair and their leading medical experts have specialised in pain-free treatments using the sleep deep method, and they really mean that. I felt incredibly relaxed the whole time, and I haven't felt any pain since. Check out Elite Hair using the link in the description. When you do, Elite Hair will provide you with a free personalised hair analysis. Then you'll join over 100,000 happy patients. Hit that link and start your hair growth journey like I did today.
Certainly, Anne, yes, 3,500 people employed at British Steel here in Scunthorpe. Certainly the town as a whole, as well as the workers, waiting with bated breath to see what gets said in Parliament at 11 o'clock today. It's certainly been welcome, though, this recall of Parliament, these emergency measures being potentially brought into place to save British Steel and to save the steelworks here in Scunthorpe. And certainly the Unite union boss here for British Steel, Martin Foster, I spoke to him and he's welcomed this meeting. This is what he had to say.
Town came after the steelworks. It's grown up around the steelworks. So the two things are intrinsically linked together. They're one and the same piece of fabric, if you like, woven together. So if you lose one, you lose the other. If it disappears, it has such a massive impact on not just the town, but the local area. 2,700 jobs. That's you dump that on the local jobs market in Scunthorpe, and it would collapse under the weight. So yeah, it's a lot of worry, a lot of uncertainty, and that can create fear.
So that's the view from Unite, who'll be holding a march later on today that's going to end at Scunthorpe United Football Club. They say it'll either be a demo if Parliament don't make the decisions that they want to see, or it'll be a celebration. So we'll see later on what the union do. But certainly there as well, Martin just reflecting how much steel means to Scunthorpe. Steel is the beating heart of Scunthorpe. It's been here for 160 years. It's in people's DNA. Generations of families work here at this steelworks, and I was in the town yesterday speaking to residents here about potential closure and about what the steelworks means to them.
Very unsettling, to be honest, because it could risk my job, of course, as well, and could be made redundant any time. So it's just nerve-wracking, to be honest. We don't know when we could be let go, and we're just in one of them situations where we've got to turn in every day and just wait until there's an announcement, haven't we?
Scunthorpe needs the steel industry. It's what holds the community together, and we're all family around there. We all try and look out for each other, you know what I mean? Without it, it'd become a ghost town, and we need it.
The only way they will know where Scunthorpe is when you mention the steelwork, and they'll be like, oh yeah, steelwork, Scunthorpe, yeah, big place. And it employed a lot of people, so all this happening, imagine how many people lost the job, and some people work there all life. And now, with no other skills, if they lost this job, we're going to struggle, the families, the kids.
Everything. If it goes, it becomes a ghost town. All the knock-on effect and everything. We've got to nationalise the steel industry. We've got nothing of our own in this country. No gas, coal, electricity, even our water's French-owned. And when the pickup comes, if we haven't got a steel industry, it's all going to go abroad, and everything's going to go abroad.
So certainly all eyes will be on Westminster from people here in Scunthorpe, seeing what the government announce later on and what the future will be for this town and for the steelworks.
And here is Sarah Jones, she's Industry Minister. Sarah Jones, why on earth are you dragging me and other people out of our beds on Saturday morning to vote through legislation you could have done when Parliament was sitting?
So we're acting today in the national interest. The Prime Minister is acting in the national interest. Your viewers won't be aware of what's been happening over the months that have passed since the general election. We have been in negotiations with the owners of British Steel for many months, acting in good faith. We put together what we thought was a very significant, very generous proposal where the government would invest alongside the owners of British Steel to secure the future of Scunthorpe. That offer was rejected. What has changed is that they are no longer acting in good faith and have stalled the purchasing of raw materials to keep the blast furnaces open. Now, if you close a blast furnace without, in an unplanned way, what happens is the steel just solidifies in the blast furnace. You cannot use them again. We will be without primary steel making, we will be without jobs in Scunthorpe, and we will be without that national capability for our construction, for our rail, that is so important from British Steel. So the choice today for MPs who are making their way here as you speak on a Saturday, as you say, very rare. This is a unique and existential moment, but the choice for MPs is, do they want to act in the national interest to secure our ability to take control of British Steel and make sure that asset is protected, or do we want to see the loss of steelmaking in the UK and the catastrophic economic shock and the shock to the workers that would also see?
So it's a halfway house, maybe towards nationalisation, but you also maybe want a private sector partner in that. But those furnaces, they're very old, aren't they? 1930s, 1950s, they've got 5 years left of operational life. Why is the taxpayer on the hook for that suddenly when it might lose us lots of money?
Mm-hmm. So, of course, you're right. These are very old blast furnaces. They've got about 5 years left of life. And when we visited with the Prime Minister, with the Secretary of State, when we were in opposition, when we visited since, we've known that's the situation. We believe that there is a deal to be made with the private sector. We believe that if we transition to new and more productive equipment, there could be a money-making opportunity there for the private sector. But what the Prime Minister said yesterday remains true. All options remain on the table.
How does this square with our net zero commitments? We've now shut down the last coking pit in Cumbria. We're shipping in coal from Japan to keep these furnaces running. Isn't it time now to reconsider the whole net zero issue and recognise it doesn't really square with our modern day commitments now in this new world of Trump world?
Well, look, gosh, we are going through one of the biggest transitions we have seen away from fossil fuels. And of course, the previous government left us very exposed to fossil fuels and didn't protect us and give us the energy security that we are now delivering. But look, in this moment, we are acting pragmatically. to keep those blast furnaces open. There are other things that you can do to make primary steel in a different way, using hydrogen, for example, which would be a clean way to make steel and is something that lots of European countries are looking at doing. I am doing a review of that at the moment to see if that is a viable option for us going forward. But today we are making a choice. MPs here today are making a choice. Do they want to give us the option of a future for Scunthorpe, or do we want to close the door to those possibilities?
How near was it, if you hadn't called MPs and peers back today, how near was that plant to closing?
Well, without the raw materials, it's only a matter of time before the blast furnace is inoperable.
Days?
Yes.
Would have gone in days were we not here today?
Yes.
And that's why it's so important we are here today. Reform UK is trying to push down some kind of amendment to get immediate nationalisation of this site. What's your take on that?
So I would say, as I go to Parliament this morning, we're starting at 11 o'clock with this piece of legislation. I would ask MPs to look at the legislation, to vote to give us that option of a future for Scunthorpe. I wouldn't encourage people to vote against it. I think this is the Prime Minister acting decisively and in the right way. It enables us to keep all options on the table. This is taxpayers' money we're also spending. We need to be mindful of that. We have to make sure every penny we spend is spent in the right way. But what we will do is stand up for British workers. What we will do is protect our manufacturing industry. We've seen steel making in the UK halve in the last 10 years, halve. We've seen the offshoring of our manufacturing. We saw the catastrophic closure in Redcar of the steel plant there, and we will not make those mistakes. This is an active government that will do the right thing for the workers of Scunthorpe.
And just finally, what influence has Donald Trump's behaviour with the tariffs, the 25% steel tariffs on British steel had in your decision making here?
Well, it's Jingyang and the choices that they've made that has caused us to be here today. They have stopped supplying the raw materials, and that is why we have to intervene. You'd have to ask them why they've made that choice. On the wider issue of tariffs, of course, we do not want to see tariffs. We do not want to see a trade war. We are negotiating with the Americans the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium and the automotive industry we know is damaging, and we want to negotiate a way through that, and we will continue to do that.
So that brought into focus the need to have domestic steel making, do you think, these tariffs from the States?
Well, I think the world has changed across the board. You can see that through the funding that the Prime Minister has secured for our defence. We need to make sure that sovereign making capability is here. We need to make sure we have the tools here to build the future that we want to see. We know on a positive side that steel making demand is going up. Whether it's floating offshore wind, whether it's construction, whether it's the 1.5 million homes, whether it's Heathrow expansion, whatever it might be, we know the demand will increase. So we think there is money to be made from the private sector, there is an industry there we can secure, and we can stop the bleeding of jobs and steel making from this country.
And just finally, that limited trade deal with Trump, days away?
You'd have to talk to the President in order to answer that question, but of course we're continuing to have conversations, of course we're continuing to negotiation. We obviously hope it comes as soon as possible.
Sarah Jones, thank you for joining us today on GB News. There you have it, Sarah Jones there, with a confident hope this will get through the House of Commons today when MPs and peers vote to give the government back control of running British Steel. So with me now is Richard Tice, the Reform UK Deputy Leader. Richard Tice, you're putting an amendment down today to nationalise British Steel. Aren't you trying to get the attention here? Isn't the point to keep this plant going and then work out the solution for this plant?
Well, look, we'll be supporting the government in getting to where it's aiming to get to today. But if you're going to do a job, then do it properly. I've got a badge here, Save Our Steel, by the Community Union, and I've been up twice to Scunthorpe this week, and we know that actually you can make a long-term viable business out of this. It's in the national interest. So I'm saying to the government, don't shilly-shally, don't mess around, get on with it, do the job properly, put all the uncertainty out of the mind, help the 3,000 plus families who are sort of living day by day in fear and terror of losing their jobs. And we can do this, and then we can grow this business, long-term contracts, bring in the idle Liberty Steel electric arc furnaces sitting there idle in Rotherham. And this is a great opportunity. Actually, if you look back Nigel and I have been saying this for 6 years. I mean, on social media in 2019, I was saying create a strategic national corporation out of British Steel. So we've been consistent on this. We just want the government to do the job properly. That's the right thing to do for Britain. Show some courage.
So you're confirming there that your 4 MPs will support this measure to give back Jonathan Reynolds effective control of the plant?
Yeah, look, the government's doing the right thing in preventing Jingye from shutting these blast furnaces down, but there's no point going halfway. Get on with it. If you've brought everybody back to Parliament on a Saturday for the first time in over 40 years since the Falklands War, then this is serious. So take it seriously, do the job fully, comprehensively, and then bring in some additional global expertise. I think there's a great opportunity here, and we want to support the government grasping that opportunity. You can bring in long-term pension fund capital in due course, but at the moment, let's remove the uncertainty, fully nationalise it, go for it, and then grow it from there.
But would that be the best deal for the taxpayer? This plant loses £700,000 a day, and the reason why they're having this halfway house today is to try and find a private sector investor to work with the state going forward on the plant to save us all money. But we're on the hook now for 2 blast furnaces in your world that are running out of use in 5 years' time.
The opportunity is actually to invest in refurbishing, relining these blast furnaces, give them another 20 years' life. I don't believe a word of Jingye's accounts. They haven't filed their accounts on time. They've charged themselves £76 million internal interest on their shareholder loans. Forget all that. This is a great deal for the taxpayer, as long as you have the right management and the right long-term contracts and ambitions.
I'm just puzzled by your wearing a union badge community. I thought you're the low-tax kind of the right-wing party battling. What is reform?
We are the party of common sense who can work with anybody and everybody in the national interest.
Are you the Lib Dems in disguise though? You're saying one thing to everybody all over the country.
We know that you can do a great deal with the right people and the right strategy and the right long-term vision, and I think actually union leaders in this case know that, and that's a very good thing. Let's show some common sense and work with people.
Richard Tice, thank you for joining us today on College Green. They have a Richard Tice making a picture with a badge from the community union. That's how strange and interesting politics is nowadays, with Reform UK going after votes in Scunthorpe and trying to keep this and nationalise this steel plant. With me now is Graham Stewart. He's a former Energy and Trade Minister. Graham Stewart, you're a Conservative MP, of course, just as well. How will the Tories vote on this bill today?
Well, of course, Chris, we haven't even seen it yet. Parliament brought back on 20 hours' notice on a problem that we've known about for months. So it feels chaotic, but you know, we recognise the need to protect UK steel production. You can't make missiles, you can't make ships, you can't make energy infrastructure or infrastructure of all sorts without it. But the government is so late to this, and it's just unfortunate that we have a Prime Minister who seems to be reactive rather than someone with a plan, even though, you know, they had plenty of time to come up with one. But here they are, just casting around from day to day, and Parliament pulled back with so many people unable to even to be here.
But aren't they reacting to a deteriorating situation at the steel plant? And they say that we could be running out of necessary coking materials or coal to keep it running. And once the steel solidifies in the furnace, we heard earlier from Sarah Jones, the Minister, that's it. The plant is shut. So perhaps it's been driven by, frankly, need to keep the plant open.
Well, there's no new news, is there? I mean, this plant, it's got very old blast furnaces, so we know it's life already. And as to the coking coal, what my constituents say to me is they find it extraordinary this government came in and stopped the production of coking coal in Cumbria with thousands of British jobs, which would have actually, ironically, been greener than any other supply in the world, and they stopped it out of ideology. So they're, on the one hand, it's push me, pull me, isn't it? One hand they say they're going to be the greenest government ever, then they do ideological moves on North Sea oil, stopping us producing that, on the greenest coking coal in the world and stopping that. But we will see this on its merits, and as I say, first of all we need to see the bill, but broadly we understand that the government is recognising the importance of steel to the economy. Well done them for that, and I imagine we will be supporting them in taking the action necessary to ensure that these furnaces don't turn off.
You mentioned push me, pull you. That's of course a fictional animal from the Dr. Doodle books. Do you think that's the nature of government policy now on green energy, on net zero? They say we're to decarbonise, but they approve Luton Airport. They are now about to try and making sure that steel keeps being made in this country.
Yeah, and there's an irreparable rift, I think, opening up in government between Ed Miliband, who's kind of net zero or bust. Unfortunately, that accurately reflects it. Kemi Badenoch's quite right to say that we should be proud of all that we've done to reduce our emissions, but you can't proceed to net zero and bankrupt British industry and make us uncompetitive. Not only is that bad for Britain, but of course no one would follow us, and if no one follows us, you don't solve net zero. So the government's current position is untenable. But if today is a recognition, the fact that we've got to go at a sensible pace and we have to ensure that economics is aligned with our efforts at decarbonisation, then that is progress. But I don't know how long Ed Miliband will stay in a government which is awake to reality.
How much of this is the Tory government's fault? You were the Trade Minister from 2018 to 2022, then Energy Minister. So you were Minister when the deal was done with Jingwei in 2020. It now looks like, was it a bad deal? Is that where we are now? Or was it a good deal at the time? Is all this the Tories' fault while we're back in Parliament, frankly, on a warm Saturday morning?
Yeah, well, 2 points I'd make to that. One is, I mean, it is fundamentally loss-making, and insofar as you could find a private partner to come in and run it, and Jingwei bring a great deal of steel experience, they've lost, according to them, over £1 billion. Well, I'd rather they lost it than the British government. And you think if they could lose £1 billion, how much would the government have lost? So I don't think that's a mistake. And the other point I would make is that Kemi Badenoch, got to remember as Trade Secretary, did do a deal with British Steel. And to move to electric arc furnaces, had done that deal. What did this Labour government do? They listened to the trade unions, they listened to their own political playmakers, and they pulled it apart. So they destroyed a perfectly good deal that Kemi had negotiated because we've got a group of ministers with no business experience, no real grip, and you can tell today with an emergency recall of Parliament on a long-standing issue on 20 hours notice, and even now we don't know what it is that we'll be debating today. That is shocking, and it just shows a Prime Minister who's out of touch and lacks grip.
What's the future for British Steel in your view? Reform UK want to put down an amendment to the bill, it may not be accepted, to nationalise today British Steel. That would bring a huge lot of liabilities onto the balance sheet of the government when it maybe can't really afford them. What would you do?
Well, it is, first of all, you've got to make a national security assessment. It's not about the jobs, important though they are. It's about whether this country would be too vulnerable to supply shocks, such as we saw after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. That's question number one, and I think the indication is that the government recognises that there is an overriding national security imperative to have virgin steel production in the UK. And if that's the case, then whatever it costs, we have to do it because it's a national imperative, but then it comes down to how are we going to do it? How do we make sure that we do something for the long term? Because the fear would be that they would fudge it. They would go along in order to minimise the short-term pain, which they, as you say, they can ill afford, when in fact what we need to do is have a long-term strategy to refurbish these very old blast furnaces, refurbish the site, or indeed replace. And now we need to hear from the government. Do they see it as a national security imperative? If so, yes. If it's for the long term, then what are they going to do to put this on the best possible footing for the long term? And do they have any idea about what that would cost?
Graham Stewart, thank you for joining us today on GB News Breakfast. And there we have it there. The Tories sound open to supporting this bill today, Michael and Anne, in the House of Commons. There could be a bit of debate about whether they go full nationalisation.